Here with their take on some of the big stories we're covering throughout the day here on Sky News, we have Yasmina and John returning. Welcome back. We're going to start with that news out of America overnight. Hillary Clinton's emails back in the headlines again. And looking at the polls, she had a 12-point lead, Yasmina, and now some of the polls saying it's as slender as 1 point.
I know, it feels very sort of like our Brexit debate, doesn't it? Where we're having these kind of neck-on-neck chats every day about who's actually going to pip it at the post. And I cannot believe that she's managed to reduce her lead by 11 points overnight because of these emails that have come out. The head of the FBI is now under a criminal investigation himself because possibly in the run-up to such an important election, we shouldn't be hearing about these stories because it really is going to affect the outcome of the election. It's such an important decision for the American people. I just hope, for the sake of the entire world, that the people that are sitting on the fence either stay on the fence and don't move over to Trump or do not see this as another black mark against Hillary's name. As we've just seen from your piece, Sarah Jane, that actually we've been hearing about these revelations, about these emails for a very long time. I just really hope that the timing of this doesn't affect the campaign in a negative way.
Donald Trump has been calling it Brexit times 10.
Yes, I'm not sure. If you actually ask Donald Trump to explain Brexit, I think we might find a completely different answer.
We don't really know what it means either, though, do we?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the problem you've got here is two of the most unpopular people in presidential history. And so we're not hearing anything about the sort of person that they are, the sort of president that they're going to be, the sort of policies that we're going to have. We're hearing this gumph and flotsam and jetsam of nothingness. Emails, I accept that if you've lost confidential information, you're in trouble, certainly if you are in the military. But most of this is just sidebars of nonsense.
It's such a dirty race. It's almost like someone's going to win because of the scandal of the other.
Yes.
Yes.
Not because they're a fantastic candidate.
The least worst option.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting about the director of the FBI. He's between a rock and a hard place, isn't he, really? Because on the one hand, he had to announce this because otherwise he would have been criticised if she got into the White House. On the other hand, you know, he could be determining the outcome of the race.
Very much so. But you can just imagine if he had not said, right, we found some new emails, another, is it 650,000? So we need to look through all of those. If he had not said that, and then that came out after Hillary had been elected, if that's the case, then the scandal there would have been perhaps even greater.
I just think that, you know, we're focusing on Hillary and these emails. We don't, you know, the content of the emails wasn't necessarily illegal. It was the fact that she was using the wrong server.
Yeah, but some of it was top secret.
But, you know, let's also focus on the fact that Donald Trump has a complete disregard for women. He's got a complete disregard for most of the population of the world. You know, that's much more toxic than somebody using a different email server.
And I completely agree with you. So what are the good points about both of those people?
Well,
what are the good points?
Yeah, back to Jonathan's point, you know, it's kind of...
Least worst option.
Exactly.
But it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of supporters of Hillary Clinton will say that she is the most qualified candidate for the White House in history.
Or wants power the most.
Again, I'm trying to find the positives, hang on. And that Trump supporters will say, you know, he is the man to make America great again because of his business acumen.
Well, that's also...
I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I find Donald Trump a really unpleasant character, a really thin-skinned. I would love to see a business person in power,
in my
but not
opinion,
him.
And he's so tapped in, hasn't he?
Yeah, but he gives business a bad name by saying that he's this high-powered businessman in America. It makes all businessmen look crass and crude, and I think it gives business the wrong name. So, let alone politics.
It's making a lot of people very anxious.
We're
getting a bit anxious about it this morning, but that's another big topic we're talking about today. And particularly when it comes to children, there's a report out that's saying that children are becoming increasingly anxious and there's more counselling that's happening than ever before. Phone calls to Childline are all about how anxious they're feeling about world events, about things like the US election when Donald Trump says we're on the verge of World War III, about the scenes they see on channels like this, you know, events in Aleppo, Syria and Iraq. Is this something you're noticing increasingly when it comes to children that are in your family?
My daughter's 11 and she talks about the United States elections. I'm a news junkie, so the news is always on in our house, but she talks about when the voting happens. What would happen if Donald Trump does get in? Why is Hillary Clinton bad? What does this mean about... So she is completely tuned into this, and which I think is good, but on the other hand, you know, I go back to my own childhood as 11. I don't think I ever saw the news. I don't think I ever heard anything about world affairs, and as far as I can remember, I was anxious about nothing other than where the next mince pie was going to be coming from. And I think that is quite sad for today's generation, that they are anxious, but we must be imposing that anxiety on them, mustn't it?
Yeah. I think it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because, of course, we want to be more informed as a society, and, of course, that's going to involve our children. And, you know, with this sort of instantaneous transfer of news across the world that we're all so used to now, it's going to affect the children. The sad side effect, of course, it's going to make them so much more anxious because their minds aren't developed enough to be able to understand that we can cope with it, we can deal with it, and actually the world is a positive place and things can get better. If you're just surrounded by destruction all the time, it is going to affect children negatively, and I think we need to pay a lot more attention to this rising anxiety.
But the world is a very small place now. That's the problem for children. They can, you know, they can sympathise with children in Syria because, and they can see pictures on Facebook. It's very small. Where, you know, perhaps when I was young, everything seemed extremely far away and not connected with my world.
And you only saw, you know, there was only news on 2 or 3 times a day. It wasn't constant.
It's not all the time.
The other thing, of course, for young kids especially, is social media. You know, they measure themselves on the amount of likes they have on their Instagram account, and they actually do. If you listen to them talk, how many likes did you get for that? And they will simply scroll through like that because they think that is in some way a measure of their popularity.
Well, you say you think that, but actually for them it is a measure of their popularity. And we're only going to see the really negative and I think devastating consequences of that as the years move forward. But I think we will start to regulate it. And I'm truly hopeful that this whole sort of social media revolution, especially with children, will come to an end.
And as Esther Ransom was on saying earlier about this, just talk to your children about things they're seeing on the TV. Start the discussion. There's been a massive new development in forensic science, and it's hoped that this will help in complicated cases that go to court. It's all about examining the crime scene in a different way. Thomas Moore has been to take a look. Have a look at his report.
And a retaining wall at a recycling centre collapses, killing 5 workers. Police can't preserve the scene as it is for long. So they turn it into a precise virtual world that they can return to time and again to piece together what's happened. This is how the process starts. Cameras scan every detail, taking millions of laser readings from multiple angles. The researchers at the University of Warwick then build a high-resolution model, an exact 3D replica of the area that they can almost walk around.
To create a 3D model of a scene like this, to be able to put all that evidence in context, is very, very powerful.
Anything suspicious, and they can take a closer look.
If a witness claimed they saw a crime or incident in this position taking place...
Down on the floor.
Yeah, and they were standing at the top of the stairs, as you can see. We can clearly establish that their viewpoint was obstructed, and that would challenge their testimony and the validity of what they were saying. Now, in a very dynamic environment where cars could be parked or a public place, we can capture that on the day, and then we could go back and revisit that forever in exactly the same condition as it was when the crime took place.
I mean, it's an interesting development, this, isn't it? It just shows how much science can help the police with their work.
We talked about social media. I mean, this is just the power of computer, the power of technology. Was it the aircraft that was shot down over Ukraine? If you watched the reconstruction of that, the 3D reconstruction, it was an astonishing. You could really, I'm going to say you could feel what happened. You could see second by second exactly what happened. And there was no argument. You can see exactly what happened, and they can do that with whether that's aircraft crashes or car crashes or accidents, anything like that.
Yeah, I think you know, this is a fantastic example of how tech is being used to reinforce, especially when it comes to sort of making sure that crime and disorder is kept to a minimum. I do worry, though, that in court, if this is used as a form of evidence, that the other side of the table might say, well, actually, there's flaws in it because it wasn't real. It's just a reconstruction. And how do you know at the time that the wind wasn't blowing this way or the sun wasn't blowing this way? You know, and all that kind of stuff. So. It depends how it stands up in court.
It helps you with placement, but it doesn't really help you with fingerprints.
Yeah, that's the other thing, doesn't have real evidence.
Okay. We're going to break some hearts now this morning. Prince Harry.
I thought you were talking about me.
Yeah, you're already off the market. But